they told you what to chase, told you how to run the race. Every move was on the page, but I didn't like their way. Had to fight and misbehave, had to find a way to change, had to leave to find my way. Got up in a day.
A woman unintentionally noticed a car shaking oddly in the parking lot. As she approached, she saw two pairs of shoes, one male and one female, beneath the car door and instantly realized what was happening inside. Embarrassed, she quickly called her fiancé to ask him to pick her up, but there was no answer. Not thinking much of it, she decided to hail a cab home instead. When she got home, Elena prepared dinner, and her missing fiancé finally returned. He hurriedly embraced her, saying, "I love you." Elena turned to ask why he hadn't answered his phone after work, but then she noticed a red mark on his neck. Just as she reached out to touch it, her fiancé quickly covered it, nervously explaining, "It must have been a mosquito bite." Elena remained silent. But in that moment, a terrifying realization hit her. The shoes her fiancé was wearing were the exact same pair she had seen near the car in the parking lot earlier. After thinking it over for a moment, she dismissed it as a coincidence. The next day, Elena, a lawyer, met with her client James to discuss his divorce case. Using her expertise, she advised him that if he wanted his wife to leave the marriage empty-handed and expedite the divorce, he should gather evidence of her infidelity. Casually, Elena glanced at a couple nearby and asked, almost impulsively, "Would you believe a red mark on your partner's neck is from a mosquito bite?" James, sharp as always, responded bluntly, "Is your fiancé cheating on you?" Elena hurriedly denied it, claiming she was asking for a friend. James didn't press the issue and instead invited her to join him in catching his wife in the act. They arrived at a hotel, and James led her into a bathroom in one of the rooms, explaining that they wouldn't be seen from there. He then instructed Elena to point her phone's camera at the bed. Although feeling puzzled, Elena complied. The next second, the camera captured a couple engaged in an intimate moment. Shocked, Elena realized that the man was her own fiancé. Terrified, Elena stumbled backward, but James steadied her, urging her to keep filming, as the woman in bed was his own wife. The shameless couple continued their affair, unaware they were being watched. As the situation was about to escalate, James calmly signaled for someone to intervene. Overwhelmed with anger, Elena confronted James. "Did you know all this from the start?" James calmly admitted he did. Furious, Elena lashed out at James, feeling that he had played her. Unexpectedly, James pulled her into his arms and whispered seductively, "Don't you want to get even?" The next moment, James kissed Elena. She instinctively resisted, but images of her scumbag fiancé's betrayal flashed through her mind. Flooded with emotion, Elena stopped fighting and responded to James's advances. Afterward, Elena regretted it. She dressed quickly and prepared to leave, telling James not to take it too seriously. This time, James didn't stop her. He was sure she would come back to him. As he watched her leave, he held onto a necklace and recalled their first meeting. She had forgotten, but James was her long-lost childhood friend. Meanwhile, the scumbag fiancé exited the hotel and happened to see Elena driving away, his face turning pale with shock. Just then, James appeared and called out to him. James was surprisingly candid, revealing that he had known about the scumbag's affair with his wife for a while. Unexpectedly, James also confessed that he didn't care anymore, because he had already fallen in love with someone else. James proposed a deal to the scumbag fiancé. He promised that if the scumbag could help him find a good lawyer to ensure a smooth divorce from his wife, the scumbag would be able to climb the social ladder and marry into a wealthy family. This offer was incredibly tempting for the scumbag fiancé. When the scumbag returned home, he noticed the red mark on Elena's neck and furiously questioned her about it. Elena snapped back, pointing out that he had cheated first. She demanded to call off the engagement, but the scumbag smirked and said that she would have to do him one last favor before he would agree to end it. The scumbag brought Elena to his company, where everyone was buzzing about the mystery woman James had been having an affair with. To her shock, Elena discovered through the video that James was actually the scumbag's boss. The scumbag eagerly introduced Elena to James, and both pretended it was their first meeting. Inside, Elena felt conflicted, not wanting to get involved with James again, but James cleverly manipulated the conversation, making it easy for the scumbag to unknowingly push Elena closer to him. Under the table, James slyly reached out and took Elena's hand, gripping it slightly. In a low voice, he whispered his true intention, "I want to divorce my wife and marry the one I truly love." Stunned by his sudden move, Elena quickly found an excuse to leave the room. But as she entered the bathroom, James followed her in. Furious, she accused him, "You're being inappropriate." James, looking somewhat hurt, confessed, "You promised you'd marry me when we were kids. How did you end up as someone else's fiancé?" Elena froze, recognizing the necklace he wore and finally realizing that James was her childhood sweetheart. Just then, they heard a knock on the door. It was the scumbag. Before Elena could react, James kissed her, holding her tightly. She was too shocked to resist, but they quickly parted just as the scumbag entered. The scumbag noticed nothing, completely oblivious to what had just happened. Back in the meeting room, James candidly explained that his marriage to his wife, Helen, was purely contractual. They had never even met properly. He had signed the marriage papers right after returning to the country. James then suggested that the scumbag and Elena prepare to join him on a business trip to sort out the engagement issue as quickly as possible. Scheming as always, James arranged for Elena to ride with him in one car, while the scumbag traveled alone in another. The atmosphere in the car became charged with tension. James glanced at the file folder in Elena's hands and asked, with amusement, "What's in the folder?" Elena calmly responded that she never goes into any situation unprepared. With a smirk, James raised an eyebrow and teased, "So that night with me, were you prepared for that too?" Unexpectedly, Elena looked him straight in the eye and said, "That was my first time." James was surprised, but also genuinely pleased by her honesty. When they arrived to meet Helen, the divorce negotiations began. However, Helen refused to divorce James, shockingly claiming that she was fine with James having an affair and that she would accept being in a two-woman, one-husband arrangement. As a professional lawyer, Elena immediately countered, sternly pointing out, "That's illegal." She then calmly pulled out a stack of photographs, presenting undeniable evidence that Helen had been having affairs with several male models during the marriage. Faced with the damning evidence, Helen realized she had no way to win. She reluctantly signed the divorce papers, conceding defeat. James arranged 2 presidential suites, suggesting that the scumbag fiancé and Elena stay the night before leaving. Elena, disgusted at the thought of staying with the scumbag, argued that she had already fulfilled her part of the deal and that the engagement should be cancelled. However, the scumbag revealed his true colors, smugly admitting that even if Helen divorced James, she would never choose him, but he planned to hold on to Elena as his gold mine. Repulsed, Elena slapped him across the face without hesitation and walked out. Later, James opened his room door and immediately saw the scumbag and Helen caught in the act, so careless that they hadn't even bothered to close the door. Amused, he called Elena over to watch the show. Afterward, James took Elena back to their suite and, half-jokingly, suggested, "Shouldn't we try something exciting too?" The two kissed passionately, unable to resist the pull between them. Afterward, James proposed that Elena become his personal lawyer and formally work with him. But just as they were discussing it, the scumbag barged into the room, furious, accusing Elena of sleeping with James. Elena, unfazed, shot back, "Isn't it more lively on your side?" James, calm as ever, responded, "It's just business." He handed Elena an official employment contract, inviting her to sign. To lighten the mood, James suggested they visit the scumbag's room to have a look. Panicking when they realized James was on his way, Helen and the scumbag scrambled, leaving their clothes scattered around. Helen quickly hid in the bathroom. After pretending not to notice, James left the room with Elena, but not before she playfully opened the bathroom door, giving the two cheaters a good scare before leaving with satisfaction. Furious, Helen vowed that if the scandal came out, she wouldn't spare the scumbag. When Elena started working at James's company, she noticed she only dealt with him directly, confirming that James liked to have control over everything. The moment she entered his office, James pulled her onto the sofa, kissing her deeply. Just then, James's father, the chairman, walked in unexpectedly, interrupting the intimate moment. They quickly separated and acted as if nothing had happened. The chairman immediately recognized Elena as the daughter of an old friend and was about to reminisce, but James cut him off. Remembering the rumors surrounding his son, the chairman realized he hadn't properly reprimanded him. James casually mentioned that he and Helen had never had a real marriage and that the divorce was final. Without missing a beat, he bluntly added, "My rumored girlfriend is Elena." The chairman, assuming James was joking, laughed and told Elena, "Don't take him seriously." But then, with a more serious tone, he said it was time to give his son a proper scolding. As Elena left the office, the scumbag intercepted her. Shamelessly, he said, "If we can figure out who James's rumored girlfriend is, we could split the hush money 50-50, what do you think?" He knew that the reason the girlfriend's identity hadn't been exposed was because James had been blocking the media. Just as Elena felt uncomfortable, James appeared and cut the conversation short. As he watched Elena prepare to leave, he caught her hand as she walked by, a hint of jealousy in his voice. "You seem pretty close with that scumbag." Elena, calm as always, asked about the media rumors. Despite his obvious feelings for her, he remained stubborn, coldly saying, "I'm only protecting you because I'm not done having my fun yet." Infuriated, Elena called him shameless and stormed off. That night, Elena stared at the evidence of her scumbag fiancé's affair on her phone, lost in thought. Before long, the scumbag showed up at her door, bringing up their partnership. Elena coldly ignored him, only asking that he inform her mother about the cancelled engagement to avoid causing any unnecessary distress. However, the scumbag's expression darkened, and he threatened, "You know about your mother's heart condition. If I expose this whole mess, it could very well kill her." He pressured Elena, demanding she cooperate with his plan. Elena glared at him with icy calm when a text from James popped up on her phone, inviting her over. She couldn't be bothered to argue with the scumbag any further. When the scumbag saw the video of his affair with Helen on Elena's phone, he exploded with rage. Helen, upon hearing about the blackmail, was furious and beat the scumbag savagely. The two got into a heated argument, with the scumbag vowing that he had ways to silence Elena. When Elena arrived at James's mansion, he immediately pulled her into the room, confessing that he had been having her monitored the entire time to ensure the media wouldn't find her. He knew she had given the evidence to the scumbag and thought it was risky, fearing the scumbag might retaliate. But Elena showed no fear. They spent a passionate night together. The next morning, Elena, feeling a bit sore, was about to leave when James suggested they go to the office together. When she refused, he playfully threatened to carry her into the office in front of everyone. Left with no choice, Elena reluctantly agreed. Seeing Elena and James arrive at the company together filled the scumbag with envy and hatred. That evening, he lost control and ambushed Elena, dragging her into a room with the intention of assaulting her. Initially, he only wanted to destroy the evidence, but his anger pushed him to go further. He wanted to ruin Elena completely. Elena screamed for help and fought back with all her strength, smashing a vase over the scumbag's head. But instead of going down, it only enraged him more, and he unleashed even greater violence upon her. Just as Elena was on the verge of despair, James arrived and saved her. Seeing the bruises and injuries all over Elena's body, James's fury reached its peak. He beat the scumbag mercilessly, and it was only in the throes of pain that the scumbag finally realized that Elena was the very rumored girlfriend of James. James, filled with rage, cruelly stomped on the scumbag's hand and coldly ordered his bodyguards to take him away, showing no mercy. James nearly lost Elena that night. He held her close, comforting her, promising that no one would ever hurt her again. He insisted that she stay at his place that night. Seeing Elena so battered and bruised, James was filled with heartache. He gently cleaned her wounds, his hands moving with careful tenderness. Meanwhile, Helen finally learned the truth, that James's rumored girlfriend was none other than Elena. To make matters worse, her scandal with the scumbag had been exposed all over the internet, fueling her fury. The next morning, James lovingly prepared breakfast for Elena, but she couldn't shake the memory of how he had threatened the scumbag the night before. She mistakenly believed that James's protection was only because he saw their relationship as nothing more than a fling, and that he viewed her as someone who belonged to him, not to be tainted by anyone else. With this in mind, Elena decided to leave. However, James wanted her to stay, and her decision to go angered him, leading to an argument, and they parted on bad terms. At James's father's birthday banquet, Elena's arrival stunned the entire crowd, all eyes turning to her. She was just about to present her gift when Helen suddenly appeared and smacked the present out of her hands, causing a stir among the guests. Without hesitation, Helen publicly revealed that Elena was James's rumored girlfriend, leaving Elena in an awkward position. But James arrived just in time, standing firmly by Elena's side. He boldly stated that his marriage to Helen had long been over in all but name, and he accused Helen of infidelity, declaring his right to choose his own partner. James's father, clearly pleased with Elena, had grown tired of Helen's antics. He immediately ordered the security guards to remove her from the party. At that moment, Elena received a phone call from her mother and rushed to the hospital. Thankfully, her mother was all right. It turned out that her mother had seen the news about Elena and James, as well as the scandal with the scumbag. Her mother offered her full support for whatever decisions Elena chose to make and reassured her not to worry. Her mother then revealed something shocking. Elena's father had once done a great favor for James's family, which explained why James's father was so fond of her. This revelation left Elena feeling even more conflicted about her emotions toward James. When Elena returned to James's mansion, she hugged him gratefully and thanked him for all the help he had given her. Feeling uncertain, she asked, "Are you helping me because of my father?" James, pretending to be evasive, simply replied, "Yes." Then, without another word, he pulled her into a tight embrace and kissed her deeply, the emotions between them spilling over. They spent a passionate night together. Meanwhile, news of Helen's outburst at the birthday party had reached her family, and she was severely punished, ultimately being disowned by the family. Seething with rage, Helen vowed to take revenge on Elena. The next morning, as Elena watched James sleep, her heart raced uncontrollably. She slipped away to freshen up, but James quietly sneaked up behind her, wrapping his arms around her as he playfully leaned into her. Feeling confused, Elena couldn't help but ask, "What are we now?" James froze for a moment, seemingly caught off guard by the question, as if searching for the right answer. Perhaps afraid of hearing something disappointing, Elena answered for him, "We're adults, just having fun, right?" With that, she turned and walked away. After she left, James murmured softly, "No. You're my girlfriend." When Elena met up with her best friend, the friend was shocked to learn about her budding romance with James. She warned Elena to be careful of James' first girlfriend, Doris. Doris and James had dated for 4 years, but they broke up when Doris left to pursue her ballet career abroad. Rumor had it that James's marriage to Helen was nothing more than an attempt to get back at Doris. That evening, Elena received an invitation from James for a candlelit dinner. She accepted and arrived to a romantic setup. James fed her a bite of food, and the atmosphere was warm and intimate. Unable to hold back, Elena asked, "Do you like me?" But instead of answering directly, James smiled and said, "The steak is delicious, and so are you." His vague response left Elena feeling a bit disappointed. She realized she shouldn't have expected a clear answer. The next morning, to thank James for helping her mother transfer hospitals, Elena decided to cook breakfast. The morning could have been perfect, but it was interrupted by a phone call. Elena noticed the name Doris on James's screen. Their plans to head to work together were cancelled, and James left the table. Curious, Elena scrolled through social media and found posts about Doris's return. She was back in the country, nursing a leg injury. Meanwhile, Doris was watching a news video about James and Elena, her heart burning with jealousy. Her sole reason for returning to the country was to get back with James. When James arrived at her house, Doris played the victim, crying pitifully and even clinging to him in an attempt to win him back. However, James wasn't falling for it. He saw through Doris's act, knowing that she was only back because she cared about his power and status. He prepared to leave, but out of some lingering sympathy for his ex, he helped her arrange treatment with the best doctors for her leg injury. Back at home, Elena waited for James until late at night, growing increasingly worried. She decided to call him, but to her shock, it was Doris who answered. Heartbroken, Elena quietly packed her bags, deciding it was time to leave James for good. James, furious that Doris had answered his phone, told her that they would no longer see each other. But when he returned home, he found the house empty. Elena was gone. Elena moved in with her best friend and cut off all contact with James, determined to sever their complicated relationship once and for all. The next day, Elena went to visit her mother, only to find her best friend, John, keeping her company. John had always been like a little brother to Elena, though in truth, he had harbored feelings for her for years. The two chatted happily, and as John left, he lightly patted her on the head, a moment that James witnessed as he arrived. Overcome with jealousy, James immediately confronted Elena, demanding, "Is that your new boyfriend?" Elena responded coolly, "He's just like a brother." Her words calmed James slightly, but he still complained, "I haven't been able to sleep properly without you around." Elena mentioned her concerns about Doris and James's relationship, admitting that it bothered her. James, finding her jealousy adorable, offered no explanation. Instead, he pulled her into a kiss. The kiss deepened, the tension rising between them, and it seemed their relationship was about to cross a new threshold. But suddenly, James's phone rang. It was Doris. The call shattered the moment. Furious, Elena slapped James across the face and stormed off. James angrily scolded Doris for her untimely call before hanging up, while, miles away, Doris stood fuming. By her side were Helen and the scumbag fiancé. As it turned out, the three of them had already formed an alliance, plotting together to take down Elena. A few days later, Doris, pretending to be a business partner, tricked James into meeting her at a restaurant under the guise of celebrating her birthday. Unexpectedly, they ran into John and Elena having dinner together. Unwilling to let it slide, James approached and began to provoke John. Not one to be outdone, Doris joined in, using a flirty tone to call James by his pet name, deliberately trying to unsettle Elena. This embarrassing scene ended with John calmly taking Elena's hand and leading her out of the restaurant, leaving James fuming as he, too, stormed out. Furious, Doris covertly informed her co-conspirators, "Tonight's the night." Later that evening, after John had dropped Elena off at her apartment and made sure she was safe, he left. But just as he departed, disaster struck. Elena was kidnapped. She woke up in an abandoned pool, facing the scumbag and Helen, who blamed all their failures and suffering on her. They subjected Elena to brutal torture, and she quickly realized that Doris had orchestrated the entire kidnapping. Meanwhile, Elena's best friend noticed she couldn't reach her and grew increasingly anxious. She immediately contacted John and James. Knowing Elena couldn't swim, the scumbag, after torturing her, cruelly pushed her into the deep pool. Elena struggled desperately in the water, her vision fading as she began to lose consciousness. In those last moments, James's face flashed in her mind. Just as she was on the verge of giving up, James appeared, diving into the pool to save her. Once back on land, James ordered his men to take care of the scumbag and Helen, showing them no mercy whatsoever. At that moment, John arrived. Seeing him, James handed the unconscious Elena over, believing she wouldn't want to see him right now. He asked John to look after her and requested that John keep the truth of the rescue a secret, letting her believe it was John who had saved her. When Elena woke up in the hospital, John, not wanting to take credit for something he hadn't done, told her the truth. However, Elena's misunderstandings about James ran deep. She believed James had only saved her because he didn't want Doris to be burdened with a death on her conscience. John recalled the intensity with which James had rescued her, but chose to remain silent. Outside the room, James overheard everything. Feeling defeated, he stood quietly as John advised him not to appear in front of Elena again and to move on with Doris. But James simply replied, "The one in my heart isn't Doris," and walked away. Doris, upon learning that the kidnapping had failed, flew into a rage. Before she could act further, she was informed that James had ordered her to be thrown out of the hospital. When she found out that James had personally risked the water, his greatest fear, to save Elena, her frustration reached new heights. At that very moment, James confronted Doris. No longer holding back, he coldly ordered her to leave the city, warning her that if she didn't, she would experience what true hell looked like. Afterward, James visited Elena in the hospital, determined to clear up the misunderstandings caused by Doris. Elena chose to believe him, and the two finally reconciled. James gently fed her water, and the atmosphere between them became increasingly warm and intimate. But just as the moment was growing more tender, Elena's best friend suddenly arrived, instantly making the situation awkward. Elena's best friend, fresh from hearing the latest gossip, shared a surprising revelation. James's mother had tragically drowned, and ever since, James had harbored a deep fear of water. Despite this lifelong phobia, he had broken through that barrier to save Elena. Hearing this, Elena's feelings toward James became even more complicated. After being discharged from the hospital, James's father invited Elena to dinner, mainly to check on her safety and well-being. After dinner, James offered to take Elena home, but instead of her place, he drove her back to his mansion. When Elena tried to leave, James quickly scooped her up and carried her inside. Seeing her scars filled James with guilt. In a low voice, he apologized, "This is all my fault. You suffered because of me." Since her wounds couldn't get wet, he tenderly picked her up, intending to help her bathe, but Elena stopped him. They were now standing close, the atmosphere thick with tension. James couldn't hold back any longer and leaned in to kiss her deeply. After their kiss, Elena's resistance slowly melted away as their emotions intertwined. That night, the two finally put all their misunderstandings and barriers behind them, spending a beautiful, intimate evening together. The next morning, Elena insisted on returning to her best friend's house. James, unwilling to let her go, held her tightly, playfully trying to convince her to stay. But despite his efforts, Elena was resolute, and James had no choice but to take her back. When they arrived, John and Elena's best friend were already waiting to pick her up. Seeing John, James, ever the jealous rival, couldn't resist subtly provoking him, tossing out thinly veiled jabs. Later that day, John invited Elena to dinner. In the warm, cozy atmosphere, he finally gathered the courage to confess his feelings. He admitted that he no longer wanted to be just the little brother and wanted to be her boyfriend instead. However, Elena didn't accept his confession. After returning home, Elena barely made it through the door before James pounced on her, pinning her to the sofa. His heart was racing, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing her any longer. Desperate and emotional, he finally confessed his true feelings. Holding her close, he pleaded, "Give me a title, please."